All right, so let's get into this. Come here real quick. I want to show you something. Here's the basic thing, okay? There was this guy, you guys know him, his name is Dave Ramsey. He's a very popular podcaster. He knows a lot about finances, way more than I do. I know way more about Social Security than he does. So at the end of the day, he made a statement about Social Security benefits, and there were some things that he talked about that I think are right, but there's one major thing that actually strengthens his argument and also hurts his argument in a very big way. So I want to go into that specifically so that everybody has an understanding as to what this super finance guru has to say, and then how essentially from a Social Security disability attorney's point of view, he's correct and also wrong. Let's get into it. This is an article specifically from The Street. Dave Ramsey bluntly warns Americans on Social Security Medicare. This is by Jeffrey Quiggles, produced on May 25th, 2025. So basically just hours ago this came out. Also, happy Memorial Day. As retirement nears, many Americans worry about the future of Social Security Medicare. These programs are essential for financial stability and healthcare access, yet uncertainty surrounding their long-term viability has grown. So people don't know when the program's going to quasi-end. So it'll reduce over time in its worth to the American people, and it's pretty much becoming like a not very helpful program in the sense of where it'll be in 5 years, 10 years from now. But people are really worried about when is it going to cut off? What's going to happen to it when it actually cuts off? And there's no specific date, but I can tell you de facto, without any issue, with perfect, crystal clear knowledge, exactly when those benefits are likely to end as a program and then convert into something else. So, all right. Personal finance author and popular podcaster Dave Ramsey has a warning and some recommendations for Americans about both Social Security and Medicare, particularly with regard to some top priorities that are important to focus on right away. Social Security is a vital source of income after decades of work, or it could be less than decades because, when you're younger and you get on Social Security for, disability benefit, that's another thing. A lot of people think Social Security is just retirement. I don't know how that happened. I don't know how they all got that wrong. Social Security has lots and lots of programs. They've got programs for immigrants. They got programs for, poor people, lots and lots of programs. Okay. Real quick, Princess Diana, and she's a princess. She is royalty of this particular YouTube channel because she's been with us for a very long time. Did a $5 donation. Let me put a little heart on there. That's absolutely amazing. Happy Memorial Day, everybody. So with that said, personal finance author and popular podcaster Dave Ramsey has a warning and some recommendations for Americans about both Social Security and Medicare, particularly with regard to some top priorities that are important to focus on right away. And they did the right away, they give you a little of that. All right. Social Security is a vital source of income after decades of work, but fears of benefit reductions and changes to eligibility requirements create some stress, especially with Trump in. I know people love Trump. Some people hate him. I get that. But, the bottom line here is that the Republican Party is almost always, although Trump isn't always the Republican Party on this, he's like his own little, he is the Republican Party, but what was the Republican Party really wanted to balance the budget on Social Security. But what he is like a person that understands that in order to get the votes to be in power, he has to not hurt the program that people pay into their whole lives. So his directional, ideology is very different from the old school Republicans that are still in there, although many of those Republicans are getting replaced right now. All right. So debates about solvency raise concerns about smaller payouts and higher retirement ages. Many are rethinking their savings strategies and looking for alternative financial options. The rising cost of living adds another layer of complexity. Inflation and economic fluctuations mean retirees may need more than expected to sustain their lifestyle, which is very true because at the very end of the day, people can't afford to even live in the same places they've paid off over their entire life, which is, frankly, it's just, I don't know. It's insane. Think about that. You spend your whole life paying off a house and then you can't afford it. That's insane. That's mind-boggling. It's just ridiculous. All right. So with that said, whether Social Security will keep up with these financial pressures is an ongoing concern. Medicare provides healthcare coverage, but many worry about affordability. The prospect of increasing premiums and reducing benefits adds to the anxiety. Prescription drug costs and specializing treatments continue to rise, forcing retirees to consider supplemental insurance. This uncertainty drives Americans to adjust their retirement plans, right? Because some of you are going to take it early, some of you are going to take it later on, some of you want it at 62, some of you want it at 65, some of you want it at 67, and some of you want it at 70, okay? And if you're really rich, you never take it at all because You're just weird like that, okay? Prescription drug costs and specialized treatments continue to rise, forcing retirees to consider supplemental insurance, which is like the underlying shit part of America. And here's kind of the big thing about it, just to be very like clear with this whole situation. Okay, hear me out on this. You know how like people are bitching about house insurance, how like insurances for house makes it impossible to become a homeowner. It's way too expensive now. That's the same thing for you as if you were a house. Your health insurance to keep your body healthy, just like your house healthy, you know what I mean? To keep your body healthy, there's a major, major problem. And the major, 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 major problem is that the insurance costs keep going up. Not only just your Medicare monthly payments, but also all the additional schedules and the private insurance options on top of that and blah, blah, blah. So it's just, the elderly and the disabled are just getting hit all over the place with these costs. And it's like they can't keep up because the money they're getting each year is becoming less and less because the cost of living adjustment is not a fair numerical figure for what they actually have to pay going into the next year. People always get effed every year that the cost of living adjustment number is higher, mid, and lower. But the higher that cost of living adjustment number is, the more they get effed. And remember, it wasn't until 5 years ago people thought a high cost of living adjustment number was a good thing. It wasn't. You always got more effed because they changed the math as to how they calculate it so that they get to keep more money, you get to have less money. Okay. This uncertainty drives Americans to adjust their retirement plans. Some delay retirement, while others focus on building private savings. Navigating these changes can be difficult. Despite the challenges, Ramsey explains retirees seek solutions. Ultimately, retirement planning requires adaptability as Social Security and Medicare continues to offer both solutions and challenges. Dave Ramsey speaks with the street about personal finance issues. The personal finance author and radio host has important advice for Americans planning for retirement on Social Security and Medicare. Now, here's the deal. So seniors are often advised against claiming Social Security early, primarily because doing so locks in a lower monthly payment for life. And a lot of you guys were like, I could have $1,800 per month as opposed to $1,400. Some of you like, I could have $3,200 as opposed to $2,700, whatever it is, whatever the figures are. Okay, but anyway, you're sitting there like, how much should I suffer until I get my monthly check? How long should I wait? And one of the main factors I just want to point out right now, one of the main factors you have to consider is essentially your ability to make money as you are older. That is like the main factor here. Yeah, you could say it's when you're going to pass away. You never know that. You could get hit by a car. You never know when that's going to happen. Yeah, you could say, it's when you're going to be able to sell your house or sell your this or sell your, sure. But the main thing is, when are you going to be able to not work anymore? And I mean, even the little stuff. I mean, where you're earning $300, $400 a month more, $500, $600 a month more, because that's the moment when you become locked in to your monthly only benefits. That's the moment where it gets real tight, real fast. Okay. Disabled people get this better than most. All right. So Ramsey takes a different approach, warning Americans that waiting too long can claim Social Security to be a massive, massive problem. Delaying benefits is often recommended to maximize monthly income. It is, but the person who actually makes the most money by you waiting to take your benefits is the Social Security Administration. It's not you. The math is set to benefit them. Quote, taking your benefits early, this is from, Ramsey, taking your benefits early means you'll receive payments for a longer period of time during retirement, Ramsey wrote. And depending on how long you live, you could end up receiving less money over the course of your retirement from Social Security the longer you wait. And he's right. This is very important. He's right. Here's what he's saying. He's saying that if you take the retirement benefits early, you're going to be getting more monthly checks than if you had waited to take it later. And to be honest, with all the COVID this, car accidents that, blah, 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 this, blah, 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 that, with all that stuff going on, you don't know when it's going to happen. You don't know what the end date is going to be. Like, you're supposed to live longer, but you don't know. So what he's saying is, from an investor type of person, get the money now, invest early. Get the money now, prop yourself up early. Because, if you wait 4 or 5 years and don't have those checks each month, that was a huge hit. That was a huge loss. You can do a lot with that money in that short period of time if you know what you're doing. And that's the other thing, is that most Social Security recipients don't know how to invest money. They don't have a background in it. They don't have any understanding. And the reality of it is this: there's never been more available information on the internet, on the YouTube, whatever, to use to figure out exactly how to actually invest. It's like it's better than college, it's better than a master's, and some of it's better than a doctorate at this point. So the point I'm getting at is you've got a lot of older people and disabled people trying to figure out how to like get out of the loop of not having enough money as a result of their situation. The information on how to do that has never been available like it is now. And then you add on AI on top of that, like, Chat GPT, and you can ask them, what should I do with this? What should I do with that? It feeds you information. It's a good deal. It's a very good deal. Now, here's kind of the point that he's getting at with this. Okay, so taking your benefits early means you'll receive payments for a longer period of time, could be years longer, during retirement. And depending on how long you live, you could end up receiving less money over the course of your retirement from Social Security the longer you wait. Because if you take it at like 70, right, and you only live for like 2 or 3 more years, then you just effed yourself because now you're not going to get enough money. You're going to get less money than if you just took it earlier. It's a good point. It's a very good point. But I'm going to tell you why it's an even better point than he realizes. Princess Diana, again, thank you with the $5 donation. That's absolutely amazing. I love the little "you're number one." That is very, very cool. And also, everybody, please remember, like and subscribe if you like these videos, if you like learning about this stuff, because it is super duper incredibly important. He quotes Dave Ramsey, "Your retirement payments die when you die." And nobody thinks of it like that. They're just like, okay, it ends at some point. It ends when I pass. But he's right. Your retirement benefits for you, they die when you die. That's it. They're over. Your kids don't get it unless they get like some sort of disabled adult child benefit, maybe a widow's benefit, right? But your check to you, it dies when you die. Okay. Of course, the decision to claim Social Security early comes with trade-offs. The longer someone waits to file, the higher their monthly benefits will be. But waiting may not always result in a greater lifetime payment. That's why Ramsey encourages seniors to calculate their break-even age, point at which total Social Security benefits received would be equal regardless of when they claimed. For example, a $2,000 monthly benefit at full retirement age of 67 drops to $1,400 if claimed at 62. However, by age 78 and a half, the total amount paid out would be the same. Let me read that to you again because the math is important. $2,000 a month. Okay. If you took it at 62 years old, it'd be $1,400. If you took it at 67, it would be $2,000, right? But you would essentially get the same amount of money from taking it early and taking it late by the time you hit 78. So you'd have to get to 79 to make money. A lot of people don't realize that. A lot of people don't have that understanding. You would have to literally get to 79 to make it make sense. And I'm not saying a lot of you aren't going to make it to 79, but to be fair, a lot of you are not going to make it to 79. It just is the way it is. Anything could happen, okay? The total amount paid out would be the same. So for those who expect to live beyond that age, waiting could be beneficial. Of course, people in poor health in their early 60s may find it wiser to claim benefits sooner, as early filing could result in a higher lifetime payout. Now, Ramsey explains additional details about Medicare, but I want to make one very important point that none of you are thinking about. All right, let's be extra smart for a moment. Let's think beyond just the analytical figures of an actuarial type giving you like what they think. Let's use our lawyer brains for a moment. What do we know is coming up? Well, we know that around 2033, right, realistically, the Social Security trust funds are going to be in a very bad spot where they're not able to pay out the full amount. So you won't be able to get your full Social Security retirement check. And then if they take disability trust fund and put it into the retirement trust fund to make the retirement trust fund last a year longer, then the Social Security disability people will be in the exact same spot. The only people who will be unaffected are SSI people, which is weird that we built it that way. But again, America's never really been for the Americans that pay in. America's always screwed over the middle class. They've always propped up the rich and the poor. Middle class, screwed. So here's the deal. You know that 2033, which isn't that far off, there's going to be a collapse problem. You know that you're only going to get around like 78, 79% of the check that you're getting right now. Okay. So you know you have to take retirement early because when that steps down, right, when that goes down, you have to get that retirement early and figure out how to make investments now so that when you hit that point, you're not in total cluster bleep mode. Okay. You also know that there's another bigger problem on the horizon. You know that at the end of the day, there's this thing called AI, and AI is massively replacing jobs. Now, you would think, oh, well, we'll just have the robots get taxed for what people used to do. No. That's not how it's going to come out. The way it's going to come out is that a company isn't going to hire 7 or 8 people, right, for that regional office because AI now does their job. And the government's going to take 10, 15, 20 years to figure out how to tax AI doing those jobs. But while that's all happening, massive amounts of FICA taxes aren't going to be paid in. So the problem is AI is going to roll out, do a bunch of stuff. Corporate's going to bank. Corporate's going to do really good. Big companies especially are going to make lots of money. And lots of people that did jobs that AI can do better are going to lose their job. It's true. I'm telling you, it's true. Now, that problem is big because over the next 10 years, it means you get less Social Security benefits because fewer FICA taxes are being paid in, which means that whole like 78, 79% that you're supposed to get drops down to like, now we're talking, okay, 75, 73, 74, 72% of what you should actually be getting each year. And that's like, 5 to 10 years away that's going to start taking effect where you can see the erosion of people paying FICA taxes. Now, that is a big problem. It is a huge problem, but it is not the major problem. The biggest problem is fertility rates. All right, so my generation, the millennials, we're just like, how did things get so badly? And, the boomers are like, well, those millennials are useless. But if we actually look at it for more than 1 second, you realize the boomers traded all of our ability to manufacture things, get raw materials, manufacture things. They traded that all over to other countries like China, Indonesia, places like that, which means that the basic functional aspects of a commercial capitalism economy were destroyed. We don't have regular capitalism in this country. We have like this little service industry and a little bit of manufacturing. We don't have capitalism. We have like the, destroyed, rotted away version of it. And so as a result, we get all these mega corporations who are able to do international trade, get products that are manufactured from overseas, right? And then they go ahead and basically make a lot of money off of it because they make money off of the production of cheap labor from other countries. That's how it works. Cool. So here's the bottom line. In order for America to succeed, it has to go back into production. But in order for it to go back into production, we have to have enough humans to do labor stuff. Will we need a bunch of humans with AI and robots? Well, we won't need as many as they do right now in places like China. But what you have to remember, and this is super crucial to this, is that people my age are not having kids like they used to. And that is because of what's called financial anxiety, financial insecurity, financial what the fuckery, right? That's why this is all going on, because we don't feel like we can afford a child. And the reason why is because, yes, it's easy to have a child back in the day and go ahead and have the child, drink out of a water hose. That's how I did it. That's how other people did it. But the bottom line is this. All right, let's go to Google right now. How much does a child cost per year? Okay. On average, a child costs around $23,000 per year. Now, okay, how much does the average family make in America per year? Okay. Average family in America makes around $80,610. Okay, cool. How much does the average rent cost per year? Okay, so what we're looking at is $13,620. Okay, how much does the average couple spend on utilities and rent per year? No, there's no way that this is correct. Hold on. There's no way. Let's see. Per month or 4,300. No, that's not right. All right. So I'm not even sure what that would come out to, but the bottom line is there's not enough money. Not enough money. People don't make enough, right? People are supposed to be making as a household, way above 100, way above 100K. They're not. And then you look at the people earning like minimum wage and they're like, I work all day. I work every day of the work week and they still can't afford an apartment. So we got a problem. Okay. The elderly, right, which are the boomers now, traded our ability to mass produce through manufacturing items. And then they also negotiated shit international trade agreements where it takes us $30 to send something to China and China $3 to send it to us. Or, it used to be 3 cents, but now it's, much higher. So the point is, they have to fix the trade agreements. That's got to happen. But the underlying issue is that young people can't afford to make more young people. That's a huge problem because young people pay for retired people and disabled people. So the problem we face is that at the end of the day, if you don't take your benefits early, you are literally setting yourself up for these upcoming artificial intelligence reductions, robotics reductions, fertility rate reductions, etc. And then you're in a situation, because then you're going to get way less than what you need to survive instead of getting it now and investing it now to have something later. So the main issue that we face, and this is why, unfortunately, at the end of the day, we know Social Security benefits are going to fail. Right. And when you say fail, we don't mean it's going to pay you $0. It's always going to pay you a small amount. Okay. No matter what. But what's going to happen is this: as it continues to pay you less and less and less, new generations will vote it into something else. Let me give you an example. There's a lot of elderly people right now. Right. That's the whole issue. There's too many boomers taking from Social Security. And there's not enough young people to pay for them. Cool, right? Because we're not making enough young people. We're not having enough children. Artificial intelligence is going to be a new huge issue, etc. All right, cool. So the bottom line, yes, Princess Diana, you have to blame the boomers because they were the ones who traded industries overseas. They could have voted to not do that. They were the ones who still had manufacturing in this country. They were the ones who literally knew this would happen, but did it anyways. You could say it was the super rich that did it. But at the end of the day, you have to hold the generation with the generation's politicians to blame because they were the ones who allowed it to happen. We became a service-only industry country for the most part. The millennials had nothing to do with that. The generation above that had nothing to do with that. The big, giant generation of boomers, they were the ones who did that. Now, you can say, that's terrible. Don't make fun of the boomers. Look, the boomers effed it up, but at the same time, they can't fix it. There's no way for these people to fix it, right? They're retired, they're done, they're handing over the keys to a house that has a broken foundation. They can't do anything. So I mean, we can pick on them, but the boomers at this point are useless for the solution, right? They did a lot of great things, but of solution going, it's over. It's over, right? The final moments of our government being ruled by people that are in their 70s and 80s, that's over. Trump's going to be the last old person to be president that's like in that age group. That's it. And this is only because of like the fanfare and the big events, and he got elected and then reelected. That's it. You're never going to see that again. You're going to see this country is going to be like other countries where a lot of the rulers are younger people in their, latter 40s, 50s, early 60s. Not latter 60s, 70s, and 80s. Those years are gone. And the reason why is, with all this new technology and changes and modifications, it usually takes somebody with what's going to be the direction in 10, 15, 20 years. Because let's call it like it is. When you're 75, okay, hold on. Let's look at how old is Trump today? Okay, Trump is 78 years old. How old is Biden today? Okay, 82 years. Jesus. All right, so the point is, okay, when you're 82 years old, you're not worried about what the solution for America is going to be in 15 to 30 years. That ain't your problem. That ain't on the table. All right, you're worried about what you're going to do during these 4 years, and then also the direction. Tristan Miller put Bernie. How old is Bernie? Hold on, let me look. Bernie's up there. He might be one of those guys that looks old but isn't old. No, he's 83 years old. Like, what do you know what I mean? Like, I remember too. It was on a Democrat legacy news station, and they basically said to Bernie, are you gonna run? Are you gonna run? And Bernie was like, what's wrong with you? I'm not gonna run. I'm 83 years old. He was like pissed at them. I think AOC will be the competitor, and I think AOC will be socialism, which is what Social Security is. But I don't, with the advent of, she might become more popular because artificial intelligence creates greater socialism. You may think it doesn't, but it does, because humans then are doing less labor, which means humans need more upkeep from the government to stay alive, achieve, etc. So she may become more popular in the future. AI is going to present that, push that in that direction. So Republicans may have a little bit of a battle on their hands with that. Again, independent, you guys usually have a political party, your thing, your yada yada. All right, but the bottom line is this. What is going to happen with Social Security benefits is that you need to get as much out of them as quickly as possible. And here's why. Ultimately, when the boomers get to the point where we're rotating out. Okay, so all right, let's do some basics here. Okay, so what is the boomer? What is the boomer generation years, or what are the boomer generation years? So 1946 to 1964. Okay, so how old is someone that was born right in 1964? Cool. All right. So somebody born in 1964, 61 years old. So to be realistic, 20 years from now, it probably won't take that long, but 20 years from now, most boomers are going to have died out. Okay, most boomers are going to have died out. And in 20 years, we're going to have artificial intelligence, robots, fertility rate's going to be total shit because people aren't going to be having kids, etc. Most boomers will have passed at that point. Now, things that will happen, there will be a bunch of housing will be cheap because all these HOA shit houses that are all over the place with these ridiculous mini governments called, HOAs, you're going to be able to buy those up for pennies on the dollar, okay? Because there's just going to be a lot of them available. But here's the deal. When they pass or get closer to passing, so let's say 10 years from now, as maybe 15, but 10 years from now, it's going to start for sure. What will happen is their voting capacity significantly diminishes because there's not as many of them. And the voting capacity of the next gen and then the millennials and then Gen Z and blah, 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 their voting capacity increases, right? It increases. Now, Social Security retirement is reliant upon the next generation from boomers voting to keep Social Security benefits. But there's not enough Gen Alphas to go ahead and keep the millennials and the Gen Zs and the Gens this and the Gens that. There's not enough of them to offset the younger generations. The younger generations are not going to pay for people to keep getting a check every month because they can't afford it. So what's going to happen is they will vote Social Security, disability, retirement into some other program, some other thing, right? So the main thing is, instead of having retirement at an age, you will have likely retirement upon being disabled enough. So instead of that you're going to retire at this age, you'll probably have to prove that you are medically incapable of working, at some point. Okay. So they'll probably get rid of retirement. They'll probably keep a form of retirement that is like disability based. When you're not able to work, they give you a check each month. That's what the evolution of this program will likely become. Okay. And that's 10, 15, 20 years, 20 years that's going to happen. 10, 15 years, that's the rollout to begin the process of it really taking, because remember, the millennials and these other generations around that point, they're not going to vote to keep paying these super big amounts to retirement. They're going to get rid of FICA taxes and then combine programs and reduce how many people can get them. Because America is losing its ability to be like the number one super winning country. After World War II, we were a super country that didn't have any of our landscape other than, of course, Hawaii really destroyed. You know what I mean? Other countries were destroyed. I mean, look at Japan, look at Germany, look at Moscow, look at France. I mean, France got it bad. France got it real bad, We didn't have that problem. We were built strong, and our manufacturing buildings, our warehouses were kicking butt, right? Okay, cool. So the problem is this. You've then got to ask yourself, what is your game? What is your direction? What is the future of how you're going to make this thing come through? So the main thing I want you to consider with this is not just what Dave Ramsey is saying, which is know your break-even point. If you, for example, were to go ahead and receive $1,400 at 62 with retirement or $2,000 at 67 with retirement, you'd have to basically live to 78 before you would break even, which many of you are not going to live much beyond 78. So get the money now, be smart with it now before the economy really starts to tank and collapse and be problematic. Now, he had additional details that he wanted to explain about Medicare. Ramsey explains that Medicare eligibility depends on various factors that can be difficult to keep track of. Medicare Part A, covering hospital stays, is available to workers who pay taxes for 10 years, as well as spouses and people with disabilities. Medicare Part B, which includes medical services, has no free premiums. Eligibility is simply reaching age 65. Medicare Part C, or Medicare Advantage, requires enrollment in Parts A and B and residency in a qualifying area. Advice, yada, yada, yada. Medicare Part D for prescription drug costs is available to those enrolled in Part A or B with sign-up options during specific enrollment periods. Medicare enrollment includes the initial enrollment period around turning 65, the general enrollment period for late sign-ups, and special enrollment periods for qualifying life events. There's also the age one, right? If you become disabled, then you have 24 months after your alleged onset date, you get Medicare. There's also an annual enrollment period of Medicare Advantage and Part D changes. Quote, at this point, we're stating the obvious, but Medicare is complex, Ramsey wrote. Just keeping the different enrollment periods straight is enough to make your brain melt. What is Ramsey really saying with this? He's saying that America is going to fail its poorer Americans. And that's a major problem because America is already giving a vast amount of the advantage. Like if you look at the chart and where the bend points are, America already gives far more to the poor than it should have to, which costs the middle class way too much. So what he's really saying underlying this whole factor analysis is that America can't afford the poor anymore. It won't be able to. The problem is the middle class is already tapped. They're already tapped. We've already taken too much from them. So the middle class now can't be tapped to give the poor more, which means America will have to come up with a new solution, or we'll have to find, realistically, the poor will have to change their living situations. They're this, they're that, they're this. We got to have a change. Otherwise, the poor will become homeless. That's the reality of this thing. What he's saying is, if you are disabled, if you are retired, your only job is to learn about investments. Learn about what you could do with $5. Learn about what you could do with $100, $500, $1,000. Because the background of this is that America is not going to be able to give you the promised amount that you were supposed to receive. That's what he's saying. He's saying America will not be able to keep its promise. Now, they already aren't, because they keep changing the cost of living adjustment math, so you get less and less each year. When they give you a little bit more, it's always not enough. But what he's saying is there are specific bend points, specific timelines where it gets really, really bad. And that's what he's realistically saying here. Real quick shout out to Princess Diana again. She did the $2 donation. That's absolutely amazing. Wanted to go ahead and give a quick shout out. She's been with us, this channel, for a very long time. Also, please remember, before I make my final point, if you want to see this channel succeed, remember to hit that like button. Remember to go ahead and subscribe, okay? Also, another thing I love to see is where basically I wake up in the morning and I see some stars on the business page for the law firm. I've owned the law firm for a little over 11 years. You can always hire any disability law firm you want. Call 5 different disability attorneys. Frankly, the one that even calls you back is probably going to be the one you're going to choose, because a lot of them won't even talk to you. But the bottom line is, when you pick out a disability law firm, pick out the one that you're usually not having to pay a large referral fee to get to. Like if you do those things where you like hire somebody through Facebook to find you a lawyer, like the lawyer's going to have to pay a bunch of the money they would normally make on the claim to go ahead and pay that referral company. So just be aware of that. Be careful with that. And then the other thing is, like, is a disability law firm an actual disability law firm? A lot of you guys will hire a law firm that's like, yeah, we'll try it. And that ain't the way to approach this. All right. With that said, my final point with this whole thing is retirement benefits will not be able to succeed in the current climate. I know some of you think Trump will magically make everything better. He will financially. He's doing that right now. But he's not going to be able to fix the nearly $30 trillion deficit problem that Social Security has over the next couple of decades. Okay? Remember, we have a deficit as a country of 36 trillion that we owe. And then in the future for Social Security benefit, we also have a $30 trillion deficit, decades and decades and decades and decades and decades worth of time that passes that we won't be able to pay. We got a problem because over the 75 years that they calculated, they know this program is going to have a real bad day. 2033 is the main bad day where it starts. All right, so now you understand what's going on with this situation, how things are evolving, etc. Which is why I'm saying to you, look, I'm not saying you need to, look to me for financial advice. I buy music gear with extra money that I have as like gifts to me to just keep me working until 2 a.m. You know what I mean? And we're doing a video specifically on the future literal studio that'll be used to help disabled get their name on the map so that they can show off their talents and hopefully make some more money as a person that needs more money. But the bottom line is, over the next week, 2 weeks, I'm going to be showing you what I've set up, and I'm really excited about it. All right, final thought. When it comes to retirement, don't look at it just as how old you're going to be when you pass. Break it down into, if I pass in 5 years, in 10 years, in 15 years, in 20 years, and then average the likelihood of problematic ending. Average it out and pick the choice that is the most smart. But just realize retirement benefits hit a real bad pothole at 2033. And by 2036, 2037, it's far worse because of AI FICA taxes not being paid. I will catch you at the next video where we go over the actual legal case standard for how the Social Security Administration figures out whether or not you are a liar. I will catch you a little bit later. Attorney Walter Hnot, please remember to like and subscribe. With that said, if you want to, you can become a member. Also, head over to Google, type in Disability Resolution Law Firm or Disability Resolution Florida. Throw some stars up there if you like. I always love seeing it in the morning. On Mondays and Thursdays, I go live to answer questions for free about disability law. And very important, there is a 1-hour private contract below where I basically go through the details where you can hire me for an hour and I walk you through how to fix a particular issue or what the SSA is looking for. I'll catch you later. We'll have a wonderful day. You have a wonderful day. We'll rock and roll, and I'll see you in about 5 to 10 minutes at the next video. Thank you so much. Attorney Walter Hnot. We'll go from there. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.